Is the congregation ready to begin?
Aye, aye,
Is that
count me
when we
down.
start sprinting, or?
See,
Well, today we have something very special because not only am I going to be reading you guys a chapter from the Lord's book, but they are also going to have two pontiffs make creations for the
You
gods.
gonna do your crouch for sprinting? Kick off the block
Okay.
here.
And the pontiffs will go in three, two, one. On to the story. I do not own Drake nor Josh, and I do not plan on making any money from this video. If I do, that's just a bonus, I guess. But anyway,
Coincidence?
this is
great.
going to go into the perspective of Drake first. Drake had just invited Josh on a double date with him and two hot blonde twins, and both sat on the couch. The box containing said model rocket held in Josh's lap. Drake took pretending to scoff. Model rocket. Ooh. Yeah, it's dumb, Josh said lamely. Launches upward at 90 miles per hour. The dark haired green teen said, trying to be casual, although his body language screamed he wanted to build it. Drake swallowed, glancing from the TV to build the rocket. Wanna build it? He asked. So much, Josh replied. Flashback end. Megan had come into her room to make fun of them for playing with model rockets, but she agreed to help them assemble it. The rocket accidentally launched into their window, blowing up the neighbor's kid's treehouse. The three had gotten shackled into rebuilding the kid's treehouse. Drake had helped Josh pull forth from the wall and screw it in place, but he forgot to saw out the door hole, which
That's a
Josh
whole
spat.
episode of Drake and Josh that you just said.
What?
Never mind.
They saw out the door hole, which Josh spazzed out. Drake didn't see why his bro got so furious. In his mind, Josh should have reminded him to cut it open. So when Megan found out, she refused to give them any tools, unplugged the power screwdriver, and left somewhere without telling them where or when she was returning. They had been cooped up for 2 hours, and Drake has gone absolutely crazy. Dude, will you sit down? Josh asked tiredly, and with a hint of irritation in his voice. Watching Drake pace restlessly was making him motion sick. I can't help it. I'm bored, Drake shot back, stopping and running his fingers through his silky tar red hair. His frustrated eyes fell on Josh, who sat leaning back against the wall, eyes shut, and he took a moment to observe Josh's newly toned and tall form. He wasn't ashamed to admit it. Josh was hot now, and when Drake had first seen him in that tool belt, he had wanted to jump him. He was sure he was bi, but for some reason, Josh was the only male he had ever been attracted to. Well, minus the brief experimentation Drake's bandmate Trevor had talked him into a few years ago. Trevor actually had been the first and only person he had ever had sex with, so now he wasn't sure what he was, straight, gay, etc. But he didn't care much. Those were labels, and one of the fun things about being a musician was he could explore a bit of everything. Trevor had been good, real good, especially considering he was an idiot, but now staring at Josh's body, Drake couldn't help feeling like the taller boy would be different, better. Josh was his constant. Even though Drake hadn't wanted Josh as a stepbrother at first, Josh had quickly become everything to Drake. Even when the two attempted to spend time apart, they became jealous and or anxious. Did he love Josh? Romantically? Drake thought a bit more. If they became lovers or boyfriends, it wouldn't be wrong or illegal. They weren't related by blood. He decided that now would be a perfect time to find out his feelings. Josh's perspective. Josh was tired and hungry and mad. He couldn't believe Megan had actually trapped them up there. After being so close to Drake for so long, Josh was attuned to him, so he knew when Drake stopped pacing and stood still. He cracked open his eyes a tiny bit so to Drake it would look like his eyes were still shut. He felt a strange feeling in his heart and when he saw Drake eyeing him thoughtfully. The thought of his bro's dark brown eyes was just mixed with confusion and thoughtfulness. In all honesty, Josh had been in love with Drake since the day they became stepbrothers, but he had carefully hidden his feelings, believing Drake to be straight. Even in his relationship with Mindy was a sham. He wasn't gay or straight or bi. He was in love with Drake because of who Drake was and what he meant to him. Gender didn't matter to him at all when it came to Drake. You can stop staring, man, he mummed.
Mummed.
Murmured. I
Mummed.
think he meant murmured, opening
Mumbled.
his eyes.
Mummed.
He wasn't surprised or caught off guard when he saw Drake kneeling in front of him, leaning in so their faces were close. Josh prided himself in being one of the only people Drake ever let close, and he was the only person Drake not only let touch him, but sought it out. Even when their dad or mom tried to hug him, Drake would either politely shrug away or suffer it briefly. You can kiss me, Josh said casually, watching for a reaction. Relief and hope rose with him as he saw the delight and excitement flash, and then Drake leaned in forward, pressing his mouth to Josh's hard. Josh wrapped his arms around the more slender teen and dragged Drake onto his lap.
No.
He noticed the sweet, melon taste of Drake's soft lips and laughed to himself. It figured Drake would use flavored lip balm. Okay, we're back to Drake's perspective.
Stop.
Drake was in absolute heaven. He had imagined what it would be like to kiss Josh, but in reality was 100 times better. Kissing Josh felt right. He felt content and relaxed. He recognized and accepted that he was in fact in love with Josh. Never had he felt this whole in any girl he kissed or Trevor, whom he had given his virginity to. There was just one thing he wanted to change, and that was Josh being gentle and hesitant. Nobody except Drake or Trevor knew, but Drake loved being as submissive as possible. He had let Trevor take control, reassured by older teen promising to be careful and to teach him. The domination was an incredible turn on. Drake knew people assumed him confident, optimistic, lucky, and charismatic, but inside he was insecure and guarded. For him, to give up control of himself was the best release ever. I want you. Do you want me? He asked breathlessly, pulling back. Panting, Josh nodded, and Drake laid on his back, tugging Josh on top of him. Josh is still looking hesitant and shy, and Drake growled, "It's not my first time with a guy. Actually, I have only slept with one other person," he said, and grinned internally when he saw the predictable flash of jealousy and anger in Josh's dark eyes. "Who?" "Trevor. He was good, very dominating, and it drove me wild. But it's okay if you're shy or nervous," Drake said, pretending to sound admiring of Trevor. Josh growled, pinning Drake's hands by his head before crushing their mouths together. He ripped Drake's lower lip and thrust his tongue inside, grinding their erections together forcefully. When the fierce kiss parted Drake's mouth, lips throbbing and his erection now straining against his boxers and jeans. He could tell Josh was aroused as well and shifted, pushing Josh back. He unbuckled Josh's belt and unzipped his pants, reaching inside and pulling out Josh's rock-hard and warm erection forth. Josh groaned, biting his lower lip. Back to Josh's perspective. Josh would never believe anything could feel as wonderful as Drake's hot, talented mouth closing around his erection. Reaching out, he gently sifted his hands through silky dark red and thrusted gently into the warm, wet mouth. Drake sucked and very lightly scraped his teeth against the
Killing myself
sensitive
tonight. I swear to fucking God.
making Josh growl and jerk his
Fucking
hips
making
up.
the noose right now.
Just before he would have to come, he forced Drake's head back. "I want you, okay?" he said as Drake nodded, working at his own jeans. Josh reached out to help, and finally Drake laid beneath him, legs spread and bare. Josh studied his body admiringly. Drake was shorter and more slender than most guys his age, but to Josh, he was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Someone is jerking off to this right now. Am I
Sorry.
Keep going.
okay? Drake asked hesitantly, for once losing his confidence as Josh stared down his body. Josh smiled, meeting his eyes. No, you're
Sorry.
not okay. You're perfect, he said, not caring how cheesy the words were. He held his fingers up and Drake sucked them in his mouth eagerly, shuddering a desire as he tasted the salt and sweat off of Josh's skin. He lapped and sucked on the fingers, and Josh pulled them free, leaning down and gently sliding one inside Drake's hole. The shorter team gasped, stiffening briefly, and Josh paused in concern. He was met by a reassuring but slightly uncomfortable smile. Trevor was my first and only, and that was a few years ago. Just bear with me, he said softly and focused on trying to relax. Josh's hand wrapped around his erection, and he leaned down, taking Drake into his mouth while gently working his finger in deeper. And to his delight, Drake started relaxing and didn't seem to notice when Josh penetrated him with two more fingers and started scissoring and stretching. Oh, God. He moved his fingers in deeper feeling. Fuck, Drake shrieked, arching upwards wildly, hands scrambling at the wooden floor, pulling his fingers out of Josh's spat on his hands, used it to lubricate his cock before started to slowly press it inside Drake. Drake's perspective again. Although it stretched and ready it still hurt, and Drake whimpered slightly as Josh thrust it a bit deeper, trying to be gentle. And then Drake's eyes flew open when Josh took one of his hands and brought it to his mouth, kissing it. It's gonna sound corny as hell, but I love you, Drake, so much. Even if you drive me crazy or give me stomach aches or headaches, I wouldn't have it any other way. He breathed and suddenly fully sheathed within Drake. After a few moments, the smaller of the two growled. Move, Josh, he demanded, and felt Josh pull out slowly and then thrust back in. Drake's head fell back, mouth opened as his newfound lover moved in and out of him slow, even strokes.
Oh, God.
Harder, he ordered, wrapped his legs
makes
around
these?
Josh, and whined
Makes
in
these?
pleasure when
They better
Josh
get paid to
obeyed,
do this shit. This better not be a pastime thing.
sliding in and out
Probably
of him
Megan.
and hard. Josh shifted and stabbed that bundle of nerves deep within Drake's body and made him go wild. He thrust in time with Josh panting and writhing as pure pleasure coursed through his body like a bolt of electricity. This is,
This is
oh
also
my
like
God.
the half-fat Josh. This is like pretty chubby Josh. This isn't like buff Josh.
So when Josh started toying with his
It's like
nipples and
chubby.
jerking his cock while slamming his cock into
Okay.
Drake's prostate repeatedly,
Started toying with his nipple. What the fuck?
I think we're done. Everything else is about them just hugging and
No, keep
embracing
it going.
each
Keep
other.
it going.
and-
Keep
Continue.
it going.
Continue. You are not done yet, Fred.
Drake and Josh weren't two people nobody thought of, just Drake or just Josh. They were close as two people could be, and now Drake could feel that pressure coiling in his lower body. Josh, I love you. Fuck, I love you. He gasped, a few more swift strokes
Nice
of Josh's
voiceover,
hard
dude.
and cock,
This is horrible.
and Drake's exploded. Buckling upwards, he spent himself on Josh's hand in between their bodies. The release caused Drake to tighten around Josh, who froze as he came hard with a long moan. Shivering with leftover pleasure, caught his breath and carefully pulled free of Drake, pulling the other shorter
Motherfucker,
teen
yo.
into his arms and kissing him silly. Drake tiredly opened his mouth, accepted the kiss. I'm tired, he mumbled, and was asleep like that. Josh grinned, and he thought what Megan's reaction would be if she let them out and decided that it was all fair and prank wars. And they all lived happily ever after. The end.
Oh God.
I'm killing myself. Okay.
Let's see what this build-off competition's like. Okay, so we got
Wait,
a tree
we're having
house.
a build-off? What?
We're having a build-off.
Since when were we having a build-off? I thought we were just reading
Okay, I'm gonna end this part right here, and
The
then
only
you'll
reason
see
I'm
who
here-
wins the build-off in the next episode.